Let me talk to you!
Following Newcastle's derby defeat, it's time for Eddie Howe's men to regroup. With a cup tie around the corner, Newcastle will and have to go again. So today we'll get the breaking news ahead of Fulham, discuss a £30 million January move, unveil the creative, exciting star who recently revealed Newcastle's concrete offer. As per, join us as we'll break it all down.
Let's go!
So starting off, several days on from the Tyne and Wear derby humiliation, the sense of anger and disappointment still hasn't faded for Newcastle United supporters. Sunday's performance was unacceptable in almost every respect, and Bruno Guimaraes made that clear immediately after the final whistle. Speaking to the media following the 1-0 defeat to Sunderland, the Brazilian midfielder described the display as a mess, pulling no punches in his assessment. Nearly 2 days later, Eddie Howe addressed the fallout in his Tuesday press conference, facing difficult questions about what went wrong, the team's mindset, and how he has dealt with such a damaging result. Responding to Bruno's comments, Howe agreed with much of the sentiment, but stopped short of fully endorsing the description, arguing that while Newcastle were desperately poor in possession, their structure without the ball remained intact. Bruno's comments were 90% right initially. I don't think we were a mess. I don't think the other parts of his original comments were wrong. We weren't a mess. We were very well organized. We just didn't deliver the performance that we wanted to. Bruno is very emotional, and that's part of his success. That's why he's such an outstanding player for us and leader for us. It's making sure our messaging is right to the outside world. The mindset now is we can't affect the past. We can only affect the future. The key thing now is how we present ourselves externally. We can't change what's already happened. All we can do is focus on what comes next, and that starts today. In fairness, the manager isn't wrong when it comes to defensive shape, with Sunderland restricted to just one shot on target. However, after such a lifeless display, it feels like a strange moment to defend any aspect of the performance, especially when Guimaraes was clearly referencing how disjointed and ineffective Newcastle were in possession. Howe was then asked why his side appeared to lack the intensity and edge shown by their rivals, to which he insisted there had been no shortage of preparation. The players knew everything they needed to know ahead of the game. There was no stone left unturned in that regard, I can assure you of that. Sometimes the game takes a path that maybe looks different to the reality. People will draw perceptions from the scoreline, but the players knew, and the players are hurting, and the players didn't want to produce that type of performance. On that ongoing search for consistency, Howe admitted it's been deeply frustrating to watch his side perform below their potential, and for the first time, hinted that mentality may be part of the issue. It's a horrible feeling, because when you enter a game you want your players to go onto the pitch and give absolutely everything they have within their soul and their body to get a positive result. That's the only thing I ever ask a player to do. Then I back their abilities once they go onto the pitch with that mindset to deliver a really good performance. There have been a few times this season where I've left a game unsure on that, and that's mentality. That's knowing you're representing yourself and your families when you enter the pitch. Your job is to do your best, and I think we have lost a little bit of that, and it's up to us to try and find a way to get that glue back. Howe then turned his attention to how the squad must respond to the criticism and disappointment, calling for unity with plenty still at stake in both league and cup competitions. I can't do that myself. It's going to be us together as a group. I understand it, the criticism. All I urge the supporters to do is what they've always done since I've been here, and that's support the team when they're playing. We have a huge group of games to come, and we have the opportunity to still make this an amazing season. So while we're in that position, while everything can still be positive, we have to attack it with all of our efforts combined. Finally, the Newcastle boss was asked whether the team has taken a step backwards after a difficult start to the campaign. Howe acknowledged the challenges of adapting to change but rejected the idea of regression. We've entered a new dynamic for the team and we're adjusting to that, and I think with that comes some bumps and some rough patches. I don't know whether backwards is the right word. I think we're changing and morphing into something else, and hopefully that something else will be very positive in the future. Addressing Newcastle United's growing injury concerns in his press conference, Eddie Howe outlined the scale of the challenge currently facing his squad. The head coach confirmed that Dan Burn will be sidelined for a significant period, describing his absence as a major setback after a run of strong performances. It's a big blow for us to lose Dan Burn, because I think he's been excellent in recent weeks. It's a rib problem and an issue with his lungs, so we wish him well, and it will be around 4 to 6 weeks out. Howe admitted that the defensive unit is where the problems are most acute, not necessarily due to volume, but because several absentees occupy the same areas of the pitch. The back line is an issue for us. We don't have many injuries, but we have a concentrated group of players that all play in the same position. Providing updates on individual players, the Newcastle boss said Sven Botman remains unavailable despite making encouraging progress. With Sven Botman, we're not entirely sure when he'll return. He's made good progress, but he's not ready to play yet. Elsewhere, Emil Kraft and club captain Kieran Trippier are both continuing their recoveries, with a tentative return penciled in around the turn of the year. Emil Kraft and Kieran Trippier are still out, and their target date will be around the new year, we think. There was more positive news regarding Nick Pope, who is edging closer to a comeback ahead of the weekend's fixture. Nick Pope isn't too far away. We'll see how he is today and for the game at the weekend. Jamal Lascelles, meanwhile, has successfully overcome a muscle issue and is back training fully with the squad. Jamal Lascelles is returning from a muscle problem. He's fit and training with the group. Turning to Yoane Wissa, Howe explained that a late decision will be made on whether the forward is ready to start, following a series of substitute appearances in recent matches. I'll make a decision on that, whether he's able to start in consultation with everybody else and with the player. We'll have to see whether he can execute what we need him to. Then in some transfer news, with the January transfer window approaching, Eddie Howe, Ross Wilson and Newcastle United's recruitment team face a critical period as they look to inject fresh energy into a squad in need of a mid-season lift. Concerns over depth are growing, particularly in light of the current injury issues affecting key defenders such as Dan Burn, Kieran Trippier and Sven Botman. The lack of available options is beginning to stretch the squad, exposing shortcomings that were already present earlier in the campaign. Even in areas where Newcastle appear well-stocked, midfield included, there are still glaring gaps in terms of player profiles. What feels especially absent is a creative, technically gifted attacking midfielder capable of operating between the lines and unlocking stubborn defenses, something neither Joelinton nor Sandro Tonali naturally provide. During the summer, the club committed £42 million to sign Jacob Ramsey from Aston Villa. However, the midfielder has struggled for game time and influence so far, and now a player Newcastle were also linked with has spoken openly about a missed opportunity to move to the Premier League. Interestingly, Bilal El Khanous has revealed that Newcastle United passed up the chance to sign him before he eventually secured a loan move away from Leicester City, joining Stuttgart instead. Following Leicester's relegation, the Moroccan international made it clear that remaining in England was his preference. Newcastle and Crystal Palace were both monitoring the situation, particularly as El Khanous had a release clause set at a reported £30 million, a fee that now looks increasingly reasonable. However, the 21-year-old claims that neither club was willing to trigger the clause, a decision that may already be coming back to haunt them. El Khanous has enjoyed an outstanding start to life in Germany, registering 6 goals and 4 assists so far this season. Of course, the Premier League was my priority in the last transfer window. I was in contact with several clubs, and with some I was even in advanced negotiations. But it didn't work out. As far as concrete offers were concerned, it was mainly Crystal Palace and Newcastle to a lesser extent. What I didn't understand above all is that it didn't work out knowing that I had a release clause. No club wanted to pay it. We managed to find a deal with Stuttgart, and I'm happy even if things haven't been easy this summer, to be honest. It was difficult to find a way out with Leicester that didn't make it easy. Hindsight is always powerful, but given Newcastle's current lack of creativity in advanced midfield areas, it's hard not to question the decision to spend £12 million more on Ramsey instead of pursuing El Khanous. The signing of Jacob Ramsey continues to divide opinion, particularly considering the fee involved and his current standing in the squad. At present, he appears to be no more than a 6th-choice midfield option, another summer arrival still searching for momentum on Tyneside. Ramsey has struggled to make a real impact in the limited minutes he's been given, with Joe Willock seemingly moving ahead of him in the pecking order despite ongoing speculation surrounding his own future. It's fair to argue that El Khanous may not have immediately forced his way into Newcastle's starting midfield 3 either, but his attacking instincts, technical quality and ability to operate in tight spaces would at least have added a different dimension, something this Newcastle side is sorely lacking when faced with low blocks and rigid defensive setups. However, in another transfer development, it seems Newcastle want to sign a similar creating profile this January. This is because Newcastle United are reportedly weighing up a possible return for Giovanni Lo Celso, with the Argentine midfielder emerging as a potential January option should Real Betis decide to cash in. According to reports from Spain, Lo Celso is on Newcastle's radar ahead of the winter transfer window, with Betis believed to be open to a calculated sale if an offer in the region of 20 to 25 million euros arrives for the 28-year-old. The Magpies are not expected to be overly busy in January, but Eddie Howe is keen to add quality in key areas as the season enters its decisive phase. Strengthening midfield options remains a priority, particularly with a player capable of operating across multiple roles within Howe's system. Several names have already been linked with a move to Tyneside. Conor Gallagher is one such option, with the Atletico Madrid midfielder facing an uncertain future in Spain, though Newcastle would likely face stiff competition for his signature. Valencia's highly rated Javi Guerra has also been mentioned, with Howe reportedly impressed by the young Spaniard's profile and potential value. Now, another La Liga-based midfielder has entered the conversation. Former Tottenham Hotspur playmaker Giovanni Lo Celso is said to be under consideration, offering a blend of top-level experience and familiarity with the Premier League, an attractive combination for Newcastle's recruitment team. Any move would depend heavily on discussions with Real Betis, who may be forced to balance sporting ambition with financial reality. The Andalusian club are not in a position of financial strength and could look to generate funds by selling one of their higher-value assets in order to reinvest elsewhere in the squad. Although Lo Celso remains an important figure for Betis, he is not viewed as untouchable. A bid within the 20 to 25 million euros range could be enough to prompt serious consideration, opening the door for Newcastle to make their move. For now, it remains unclear how advanced the interest is, or whether Newcastle will formalize their interest when the window opens. But Lo Celso's name is one to watch as January approaches.